Chomariwa, and I'm the lead student ambassador and student recruitment coordinator for Osgoode Hall Law School. And I'm really excited to be here today to just talk to you a little bit more about Osgoode and what we have to offer. So we're going to be touching on three different components. We'll touch upon eligibility, the application components, as well as deadlines, because that's very important when you are applying for law school. You definitely want to make a note of when the deadline is, and for majority of the law schools across Canada, it is around November 1st, or in Ontario, it's around November 1st. So very important to kind of keep a note of that. So first, academic requirements. Generally, we require a minimum of 3 years of an undergraduate study, which is around 90 credits. You do not have to take any specific program. There's no preferred program for consideration. Alternatively, if there are any individuals who, maybe have less than 3 years of a university study, you are also eligible to apply if you're a mature student, and that's at least 26 as of September of that year that you're applying. And you have to also have a minimum of a 5 year non-academic experience. I'm assuming that majority of the individuals in this talk today and those that are listening are probably coming from university. So in that case, you would have to have at least a minimum of 3 years undergraduate requirement. The LSAT is required for all applicants. We'll talk more into detail about the exam later on. Then you also have to have a proof of a language, English language proficiency. It's also required unless English is your first language or you have completed a 1 year at a post-secondary institution where English is the official language. So as long as if English is your first language or you've completed something at a post-secondary institution for at least 1 year in the English language, then you do not need to provide this. We also have some combined programs with other master programs. You must apply separately to meet the eligibility criteria for both the JD and the other programs. So if you are interested in looking into other programs, you would have to go on their website and see what their eligibility criteria are. And you will also have to meet their eligibility criteria. And then you could also apply in your 1L year. So say that, you decide that when you were applying, you didn't want to apply, but as you were going through 1L, you're like, hey, you know what? I kind of do want to get my MBA. You're able to apply in your 1L year. Okay, so applications are completed through the OSAS website. So you'll go on here, you'll complete your profile, you'll fill out all the questions that you need to fill out, and this is where you'll be applying for all of the law schools that you're applying to. So, of course, take a look at the other law schools and see what their own eligibility criteria are. But for us, we have two categories. We have the general category, and then we also have the Indigenous category, and this is for Indigenous applicants. So with Osgoode's reconciliation plan, we are committed to increasing Indigenous representation in the legal profession. If you're not an Indigenous applicant, you will fall underneath the general category. And we will also require documentation corroborating, the support that you're an Indigenous applicant. Okay, so for the LSAT, so scores are valid for about 5 years. So this one was applying to this year. For your year, it would be about 2006 if you didn't apply in this cycle. I'm assuming so scores are valid for 5 years. And we will use the highest score of all of the LSATs that you've taken. So the oldest score that we would accept would be for next year when you're applying in the next cycle, it would be June 2021 and up to January 2026. The exam's digital format is completed in two parts. So as you may know, there's a multiple choice and then there's also a written part. This is governed by the Law Schools Admissions Council. So please refer to their website for more information on that. We do not have a minimum score when it comes to Osgoode because we do take a holistic approach. However, we do consider a score that is about 80% or higher would be competitive. A higher score is always a benefit to your application. However, we do not have a minimum cutoff. So say that you got a lower score than intended, that is still okay. You could apply because we look at other components of your application and we take more of a holistic approach to viewing the application. So with your transcripts, this is also required, is one of our requirements. So just like the LSAT, we do not have a minimum required score or GPA, but what we do consider competitive would be around an A to an A minus. That's around a 3.75 on a 4.0 scale. We require that you provide all transcripts from across all post-secondary institutions that you've attended, including colleges or graduate studies. So say that you decided to go on and complete a master's later on, or if you originally came from a college diploma, we require all of those transcripts. What is used, however, to come up with your GPA will only be those of an undergraduate study. Um, and it is calculated by the OSAS website as well too. Um, so graduate grades are considered, but they're not a factor in the calculation of your GPA, and neither are the college grades. So it'd really just be that undergraduate grades that go into your GPA. However, we will still see all transcripts. And transcripts from outside North America, they're converted by OSAS as well too. They must have credentials assessed by WES, which is the World Education Services, and is assessed on a course by course basis to determine the Canadian equivalency to it. What we're really looking for is a consistent, strong performance. We will also consider upwards trends because we do understand that, sometimes transitioning into from high school straight into university can be difficult for many, many individuals. So we do also consider the upward trend. We're seeing that, hey, maybe first year wasn't the greatest. Second year they got better. Third year they got better. And fourth year they did amazingly well. Those are some things that we do consider, and any factors that are cited within your personal statement if it is related to your performance considerations. But I'll kind of go more in depth into that right now, actually, into our next slide. So with the personal statement, this is really the only opportunity to tell us about who you are and what you think the admissions committee really needs to hear to make an informed decision, other than your stats and your extracurriculars. We really want you to be genuine in this portion in your responses and explain why Osgoode should choose you, essentially, right? So with part A, this is mandatory. You have to complete this part. This is everybody has to do this part of the application. And here you'll talk about, your personal, your academic achievements. And then you'll also talk about, your interests, why law school, why Osgoode, what you hope to get out of this, what you hope to do in your future, how you want to use your legal education. This is where you'll kind of touch on that. Now, part B, this is where our holistic process kind of comes in hand. And this is where you'll get to talk about, different factors or things that you think that the admissions committee needs to know. And you could touch on equity factors. So any systemic barriers to equal access to education, how you overcame challenges. Maybe you came from, a a family situation that was not conducive to educational achievement, such as family size, not being able to have, the financial support needed to maybe get tutors. There might also be cultural or social factors, or even individuals who might have disabilities or different abilities, physical, sensory, or even psychological. You want to touch on these within the section, or highlight some of the equity factors. I know when I applied to Osgoode, I highlighted the fact that I was a Black woman. I also highlighted the fact that I was a parent. All these equity considerations is what I put into my application, and it is strongly encouraged that if you do identify with, say, a different background, or you have different equity considerations, that you do talk about that, and that you do highlight how your own unique experiences can add into Osgoode's community. You could also talk about your work and life experience. So especially if like you're a mature student, but even if there's individuals that I know that are out there that they had to work while they were in school. Not everybody is privileged where they're just able to, be a part of many extracurriculars. Some of them do have different responsibilities, whether that means, having to hold down a part-time job in order to help out the family. you would want to talk about this. You would want to talk about your work and your life experiences and how that might have contributed to maybe your performance in school, or maybe the fact that you're not able to do too many extracurriculars or any extracurriculars at all. You can also talk about your performance considerations. So, speaking about, the fact that, hey, my first year didn't go so well. It happens, it's life. Maybe these were some of the factors that kind of contributed to that. Or if your LSAT didn't go so well, hey, I don't have the financial resources to afford a tutor, which is very common for a lot of individuals where they don't have those resources to get a tutor for the LSAT. You could speak about that in this section as well too. And of course, highlighting your diversity. If you feel that your unique experiences will lend a distinct perspective to the community, we definitely encourage you to talk about that, as I mentioned previously. Okay, so letter of reference. We require two letter of references. At least one should be an academic reference. If you've been out of school for longer than 5 years, then an employer as an alternative is accepted. But at least one academic reference, if not. The other reference can be, maybe somebody that you did some volunteer work in the field in the community. It could be another academic reference. It could be an employer that you might have. Do not make it your parents, please. And then also make sure that the individuals who you do pick to be a reference, it is somebody who knows you, somebody who's able to really add substance to your application, somebody who could talk about, any personal qualities that you might have. They could talk about your academic capabilities, your performance in academia, any employment or volunteer settings. Maybe they might even know about any of the special considerations that you disclose in Part B of your personal statement. You might want to also include they can also, if they're able to speak about that and say that they do know about the circumstances or the situations, and it's something that they are privy to, they can also touch on that within their own letter of reference. But with that, I'm saying that we really want you to pick individuals who can really highlight who you are and can really showcase your own capabilities as well too. Okay, so with your autobiographical sketch, this is similar to like a resume, or like a CV. You're going to be able to list all of your, this is like the opportunity to list all of your different achievements, your work or volunteer experience, any extracurriculars that you've been a part of, any awards that maybe that you've won, research studies that you've done, contributions to your school and the community, would be an asset. But as I mentioned before, we do understand that not every individual is able to do these things because they do have other responsibilities or others circumstances in their life that kind of limited them from doing a lot of these things, and that's okay. With that being said, what we do require for the autobiographical sketch is that you include things from your post-secondary studies up till the time that you graduated, or up till the time that you're applying to law school. We ask that you do not include things from high school, unless they are like really outstanding achievements. Say that you won the Nobel Peace Prize in high school, great. Say that you published this really amazing article that won awards, things along those lines. Of course, include them. But if it's something like, you won MVP for your high school basketball team, you could leave that out. Um, so yeah, that's that. So with the English language proficiency test, I know I kind of touched on this really quickly in the beginning, but it's pretty much it's required if English is not your first language. It is waived if you've studied at least 1 year full time at a post-secondary institution where English is the official language of instruction. Um, but of course, you could go on our website and kind of see what acceptable tests or scores are required for this if you do need to provide this. So with the financial statement, we strongly encourage you, when you do apply, to submit your application that is as this financial statement is used for scholarships and our income contingency loan program. So once you've applied, you'll receive an email from Osgoode just letting you know that you're able to submit your financial statement and they'll provide you with the information needed to do so. And then we really encourage that you do that. Our entrance scholarships, many are awarded based on a combination of academic merit and financial need. We require the financial statement to determine whether or not you do meet the eligibility requirements for financial need. With our income contingency program, this allows students who wouldn't normally apply to law school due to financial constraints be fully funded for all 3 years of their JD program with bursaries and loans. And the last acceptable LSAT, so you have to write your LSAT by November of that year in order to qualify for this. With the statement, it just asks basic information about resources, expenses, assets, and debts, as well as any personal family circumstances. This is not used whatsoever to for like admissions considerations to the program. It's only considered after you've been admitted to the program. So as I touched on before, there's deadlines. Very, very, very important that you keep the deadlines in mind. So deadlines for admissions, it starts, deadlines for admissions start for the program that starts in that September. So say that you're applying for September 2026, the deadline for that admissions will be November 1st. And it is a strong, hard deadline. We really do encourage people and recommend that you do get in your applications before the November 1st deadline because anything can happen, especially with technology. Systems can crash, especially when people are trying to get all their applications in at the same time. The system might get overloaded. Things might happen. Your computer might crash. There's so many different things so many different possibilities. And each year there's at least somebody who does email saying like, hey, it's November 2nd. I get it, but this happened. And unfortunately, we can't do anything about that. We do accept up to the January LSAT. So as I mentioned before, January of, say it's next year, the January 2026 LSAT would be the LSAT that we would accept. However, as I did mention, the income contingency loan program, it depends on the November LSAT. As well, we do encourage people to do at least their first LSAT before that January timeline because you never know. When you do get into like a testing environment, it can be very different. You might not end up getting the score that you want, especially if that's your first time writing. As well as a bulk of our offers, like we do start giving out our offers in December and it continues on a rolling basis until June. And a bulk of our offers are provided in January, February, and March. And then the wait pool is established in June. So we do actually encourage individuals to kind of get out there to do their LSAT sooner as opposed to later. And then if you have to redo it, then you have to redo it. At least you have that buffer to do so. And that is it. I hope I didn't go through it too quickly, but
That's awesome. Well, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or just unmute and ask away. If there's no other questions, I have a question. When do students typically find out about scholarships, entrance scholarships?
yeah, so with the entrance scholarships, that's usually around closer into the summer is when they'll find out about their entrance scholarships.
Okay, okay, sounds good. Yeah. See one in the chat here. Are you put at a disadvantage if you take the January LSAT?
So as I mentioned before, it's not that you're put at a disadvantage, but the thing is, if you do complete the January LSAT, your scores don't actually get released until February, and admissions offers are already going out by December, and then that would mean that you would miss the December, January, and even February pretty much because it comes out maybe mid-February, and then they would have to go back and review your application before giving it out. And even this year, we had a lot of individuals who did we were waiting for their January LSAT score. So admissions are already going out by that time. So it's not that you're put at a it's not that it's like the end all be all. Like if you write it in January, you're not getting in. There are individuals who still get in with a January LSAT score. It's just that the offers have already been going out, and there's only so many seats at Osgoode. We start reviewing applications once a deadline has passed, and in December is when the offers start to roll out. You're welcome.
Last call for any questions. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you again for taking the time to present to us. That was super informative, especially because it differs quite a bit from the Alberta process. So thanks again for doing that, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you for having me, and you guys also enjoy your evening as well too.
Yeah.
Take care.